This episode of the Linux Action Show is brought to you by DigitalOcean and by Ting. Go to last.ting.com and save $25 off your first device or your first month of service. Welcome to Linux Action Show, episode 343. My name is Chris.
My name is Matt.
Hey, Matt, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Are you ready for me to tell folks about the big show today?
Let's rock and roll.
All right, well, coming up on this week's episode of the Linux Action Show, we have a Fedora Developer Roundtable. 5 developers from the Fedora project join us, and we'll break out the different flavors of Fedora 21 into their areas of expertise, and then we go deep dive into some of the new technologies they're shipping in Fedora 21, some of the achievements they're the most proud of, and some of the stuff that we can look forward to in Fedora 22. It starts with the server and the cloud stuff, really super technical, and we wrap it all up with the workstation stuff, including a few tidbits that I know a lot of you have been wondering about. It's a lot of stuff to cover, and it's sort of perfect. It's a great end capper to all of our Fedora coverage.
Absolutely.
In the news segment, we're going to talk with Dustin Kirkland. He's the guy that heads up all of the cloud initiatives over at Canonical, and he's going to come on the show and tell us what the heck Ubuntu Snappy Core is, where it fits and all of this kind of stuff, and why they're doing it. So Dustin will join us in the news segment coming up in just a little bit. So lots of interviews. I believe that makes it 6 guests.
6 guests. That is a lot of show.
That is a lot of show. But of course, it's not just all of that. We've got our picks and the feedback coming up. So why don't we start with the picks, Matt?
Yeah.
This graphing calculator runs Linux.
Yeah. This could be useful.
Yeah, this was of course. You need to have you need to have Linux on your calculator.
Of course.
Real
Obviously.
talk, everybody. You got to have this. So I want to give a special thank you to Miker89 in the subreddit for linking this up, and then also a double special apology to Blue Phoenix 316 for submitting this a long time ago, and me not going with it when he submitted it. But Miker89 did submit it to the subreddit. It got 15 upvotes. And so here it is, Matt.
Oh my God, that's cool.
You know, of course, you're probably familiar with the ubiquitous TI-83.
I was a TI guy back in the day.
This is now the TI Inspire series of graphing calculators, and it uses a modern ARM processor. And Coding Hobbit, this is the guy that did it, managed to get Debian running on the TI Inspire calculator. He's even written a guide for it. It uses a jailbreak on the Endless. It's called the Endless jailbreak, which you run on the Inspire. And it allows code to run at a low level on the device. It includes a full SDK, an emulator, a debugger for developing apps. In this case, he used it to load the Linux kernel. The root file system is built on a PC using Deb Bootstrap, using the QEMU ARM emulator. He builds it on his PC, and then he moves it over to the calculator.
Whoa.
It boots into Debian in about 2 minutes. So here we go.
Oh, my God.
So you can see there's the unit going off right there like crazy, and it just kind of keeps going for a while.
Right, and so the whole time you're thinking, is this going to boot up, or am I going to go have lunch?
Is it going to make it? Is it going to make it?
Am I going to hold this camera here and take a picture of this the entire time?
So it's funny because it does actually, when you look at it, it does at a moment you can see him holding the camera there, and it's extended format, so it's a full-fledged Linux box. You could probably throw Apache on there and call it good, I suppose.
That's crazy, man.
You know what, Linux, we always joke about Linux on toasters and calculators, but it's real.
Trying to actually run like a bare bones server on your TI.
Hey, why not?
That would be just, and if you could somehow solder in some sort of networking situation there, I don't even know how you would.
I would, what I would want to do? Yeah, I'd want to get like some Wi-Fi up in this business, and
there
then
you
get
go.
a podcast sync client on there, so that way I could listen to podcasts on my calculator.
That is kind of cool.
Look how slow this thing boots. It's still going up.
I have like a box full.
It's totally understandable.
I got to check this out.
I know, right? Yeah.
Just because.
Not exactly sure why you'd want to do this. We try to come up with a couple ideas.
It's one of those things where you can. I have a lot of half-baked stuff around the house that you ask the same thing about.
Hey, no, I
got some weird projects. Yeah.
I was the guy back in the day trying to put it on all those PDAs when it was a really weird thing to do. Now everybody's now they're even putting them on calculators. All right, Matt, we got a lot to get into. I've got a pick that is sort of. It's one of these things that's helped me out for a really long time, and I never thought about to share it with the community until today, and it was based on the email I got earlier. So we're going to get to that, as well as our other picks and a little PSA, and then, of course, the rest of the big show. But first, we're going to thank DigitalOcean, our first sponsor, on this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. DigitalOcean is a simple cloud hosting provider dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way for you to spin up your own cloud server. I've got 3 droplets that are like my main go-to droplets right now. And I'm thinking about setting up, I don't know if I'm going to use an existing droplet or potentially setting up another droplet because the pricing is so reasonable that sometimes it's worth just throwing it all on one rig. And of course, what I'm talking about is deploying Ghost. And DigitalOcean makes deploying Ghost as simple as clicking one button. And you can also deploy a server running on Ubuntu, CentOS, Debian, Fedora, or CoreOS. So you have one-click installations of Fedora with images on top of that, and you can get started in less than 55 seconds. Pricing plans start at only about $5 per month. They get you 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, 1 CPU, and a terabyte of transfer. And you could be crazy like our friend Wimpy, who joins us all the time on Linux Unplugged. He said, did I just invent cloud-top computing? Here's an Ubuntu Mate 1404 running in a browser. It's Ubuntu Mate deployed on top of a DigitalOcean droplet using X2Go to serve everything up via SSH. And there is his full remote desktop session.
That is crazy.
Running off a droplet in his web browser. It's funny because I was actually thinking about making a segment on something similar to this. I hadn't made the connection of doing it on a droplet, though. I was going to do it on a rig of my house. I love the idea of being able to log into this remotely, batch up some stuff, and then come back in and check on it later.
And 2 critical things that I went back and forth with him on a little bit that I want to make clear is one, performance was there.
Yes.
And that was important. And the other thing is that he actually has a use case scenario where it's kind of like a computer he can take with him and access remotely, easily, and it's always the same.
Yeah, X2Go, we're going to do a whole show on it in the near future because we've talked about it a little bit in the past, but it is magic.
That is so cool.
It is amazing the performance X2Go can deliver. And he's running this on a DigitalOcean droplet with 1 gig of RAM, 30 gigabyte hard drive. And
it's just mind-boggling.
Says the complete install only requires 3 gigabytes of space, so he's got 30 gig disk, so he's set to go. That's really that is really truly like the cloud computing where you
really is.
You match this up with like BitTorrent Sync or SyncThing or Dropbox, that way you have access to the files you need and you can connect to it from any machine. It's really neat. It's one example of what you could use DigitalOcean for, and since we've got a promo code, you can actually try out DigitalOcean for 2 months for free. So you could play with something like that if you use the promo code LAS December, LAS December, one word, lowercase. That'll give you a $10 credit. You apply that to your account. You can try out the $5 rig, 2 months for free. And DigitalOcean has data center locations in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, and London. The interface is really simple and intuitive. The control panel is amazing, and power users can replicate that control panel on a larger scale with DigitalOcean's straightforward API. So many great reasons to use DigitalOcean, from the interface to the fact that it runs on top of Linux and KVM, the fact that they're all in on some of the greatest technologies in the open source space, and really, it's a great way to go play with CoreOS. It's a very hot item, and if you've noticed, a trend has come up in our interviews recently. A lot of the people we've been talking to are making big moves to stay competitive with CoreOS, and there's a reason for that, and you can go try it right now over at DigitalOcean. Just use the promo code LAST December when you check out or apply it to your account. You get that $10 credit. You support your favorite Linux podcast, but you also try it out for 2 months for free. DigitalOcean.com.
Quick thing I want to mention on them, too, is one thing I picked up on recently, and I never really stopped to think about it because I'm kind of on autopilot about it, but a lot of other web hosting services are like, oh, yeah, you want to use insecure FTP? That's cool. Go ahead. Not a DigitalOcean. No.
Hey,
they
man.
say, hey, you know what? You're going to use something secure. We're going to make it easy to do. You're going to key that puppy up and, use FileZilla, for example, to send stuff back and forth. I really appreciated the way they handle that.
They have a lot of really great tutorials, too. In fact, they'll pay you to write up to $200. Wow. We have a link in the show notes. So check out their tutorial section, too. It's like something they're really proud of, and I think rightly so. Okay, Matt, we've got our first desktop app pick. This one, well, it's a little boring.
Okay, that's cool.
I've been writing a lot of ISO images lately, and so DD is cool. It's solid. I love DD. It's my bro. It's my BFF. But I have been seeing someone else. It's called DCFLDD.
So you have an open relationship with DD. Okay.
I do,
okay.
And it's really healthy and loving. DCFLDD is an enhanced version of DD with features that are useful for forensics, security, and also those of us who are impatient and just like progress. Like progress indicators.
Right, exactly.
So it does hashing on the fly. It does status output. It can update the user of its progress in terms of the amount of data transferred and how long the operation will take. I'm sorry, but I write so many ISO images that right there was the reason I switched to this. It does image wipe and verify. It can do flexible disk wipes. It can be used to wipe disk quickly with a known pattern if desired. It can split the output so it can go to multiple files. That's really cool. Ooh. So you can write to multiple flash disks at once. It can also do piped output and logs. So it can send all log data to output commands as well as to files natively. It's really neat. I don't really have much to show you because it's a DD app.
But it kind of raises the question: will you be returning DD's calls?
I don't think so. Not unless DD loses a little bit of weight and maybe shows some progress. I don't know.
Or at least learns how to do the multi-flash drive thing.
All right.
Okay.
So, then I do have a secondary pick though. If you need to write an ISO image, but you just hate using that terminal. OpenSUSE actually makes an image writer available that you can get for a lot of distros. Did I install it here? I don't know if I don't think I did.
Sounds awesome though.
Yeah, I didn't install it, but yes, I did install it. Look at me.
There we go.
So this is it right here. You find your disk image, and then you see it's already got my USB thumbstick pre-selected in the dropdown. That's the only one. It just figures out what that is, so you don't even have to know that it's dev SDC.
And I love you just drop that bad boy in.
Yeah, I don't know if I have any ISO images. Let me see if I do. I don't think I do, but I could double check real quick. And it's just a process. It's just a matter of no, I don't have any ISOs on here. But it really is just a matter of you just click and drag the ISO onto this image right here, and then click write. And it does a little checking too. So I've even tried it with Windows 7 image disks, and it'll write the image. I actually never tried to boot it.
Right? Yeah.
I did try to write it.
Why would you try and boot that crazy thing?
No. So it's called, depending on what you search for, it's just Image Writer on GitHub, but it's SUSE Studio Image Writer. This is another way for you to write ISO images to a thumbstick if for some reason you're an anti DD user, which no judgments if you are. All right, man, I got to find my Chrome browser, and then we'll move on. So, and we'll have links to all of that shenanigans in the show notes as well. So it's Image Writer from OpenSUSE and DCFLDD, which is pretty cool.
The new lady in the life, yeah.
Hey, if you're a developer and you've either A, made an app for Jupiter Broadcasting, like an Android app or a Roku app or anything, an XBMC app or
big time on that.
Something it's really great. We're holding a developer summit on Monday. It's tomorrow, the 15th, and we're doing it at 1 p.m. Pacific. We're trying to come up with some base requirements of what developers need from Jupiter Broadcasting, an API design, things that we can do to make it easier for people to develop apps around our content. That's one of many topics we're discussing on Monday. We're also going to discuss replacing our website, community projects that are underway. We're going to hold a developer summit Monday, December 15th, 1 p.m. That'll probably become more regular, but with the holidays, it's going to be a little irregular at start. It's going to be on our Mumble room at mumble.jupitercolony.com, port 64734, or you can join us at irc.geekshed.net, #JupiterDev in the IRC. You can also watch it live at jblive.tv. Now, if you are interested in this topic and what we plan to do in 2015 around our website, around building an API for Jupiter Broadcasting, but you cannot attend at 1 p.m. Pacific tomorrow, Monday the 15th, then if you are a patreon.com/today supporter, we'll be giving you the video. Will also make it available to folks in the Jupiter Dev IRC room if you want to go idle in there. So you don't have to make it live. We'd love to have you be there live. If you're a patron of the Jupiter Broadcasting Network, we'll make a video available for you. Or if you're in the Jupiter Dev on Geekshed, #JupiterDev, you'll get it there. Or you can join us live. We'd love to hear what you'd like to see from Jupiter Broadcasting from a developer's perspective. So we're going to start talking to make plans for 2015 and tell you about some of our ideas. So that'll be on Monday.
Whoop. Cool.
Right after the Coda Radio live stream, as a matter of fact.
Oh, good timing. Yeah.
So I want to do a spotlight this week of an open source project that I may have mentioned a couple of times, over the years, never spotlighted it, and I got an email from a listener who said he switched to Linux, but he really struggles with dyslexia. And he's been having a hard time reading content on the screen on his Linux laptop. And so I thought this would probably be a good time, and this is what I emailed him back already, but I thought this would be a good time to mention OpenDyslexic. Have we talked about this?
No, and I have a couple learning disabilities, not dyslexia specifically, but I was looking through this, and it's this actually might help me not make my editor want to scream.
It's an open source font created to increase readability for readers with dyslexia. The typeface includes regular bold and bold italic styles. It's being updated continually to improve any aspect of it to make it easier for those of us who suffer from this problem. And I don't know if I have dyslexia myself. I obviously have something about reading the screen, and this is a weighted font, basically. And that's what really makes this work. And I've opened it just to show you. I've installed it here on my Archbox, and I have it on my terminal just to give you an idea of what it would kind of look like on the terminal. And here's HTOP. For me, I don't know if it works quite right on the terminal. They actually have a mono version, too. But anyways...
Well, that's easier to read.
Yeah,
from here. From here, it's like I can glance through my peripheral vision and actually make out most of that.
Yeah, you see the way they weight the bottom of the letters. That's for me what makes the difference.
That's a no-brainer.
So for me, I'm not so sure I like the look. But so what my compromise has been is when I find something really long online that I'm having a hard time working my way through, I save it to a service called Instapaper. You've probably heard of that.
Yes.
And Instapaper, in the app, you can say, use the OpenDyslexic font, or OpenDyslexic.
Man.
And so I can read really long-form stuff with this font.
That's cool.
But it's kind of nice to be able to change it on the system, too.
Yeah, because I don't care, from a sexy appeal, I don't care how it looks. As long as I can read it or I can actually, if I'm putting content onto a page, God, that'd be huge.
Yeah. Yeah, when I have
Really
huge content, Matt, that I
Huge.
really got to plow through.
Right?
Then I stuff it into Instapaper. That's what I'm saying, because it's got the OpenDyslexic font.
Absolutely.
I'll have it linked up in the show notes. You can find it at opendyslexic.org.
That is so awesome.
Yeah, I think it could be useful. And even if you don't have dyslexia, if you just read the screen a lot and your eyes get tired at night, it might just be useful to switch over. You could have like one web browser set up with this, so that way for your late night reading.
Oh, yeah, because even with the, I forget the color changing app.
Yeah, Xflux is what I use.
Xflux. Even with Xflux, I get headaches really easy.
Redshift is
So,
another
yeah,
one.
Redshift. Yep.
Yeah, Flux, Xflux, and Redshift will change the tone of the computer monitor at sunset, so that way it's not so blue in your face.
And they do help. It legitimately does. It looks weird when you first see it. Yeah, but it works.
I run it everywhere, though.
Yeah.
Because if you have one monitor that doesn't have it, then that monitor hurts to look at.
Exactly.
So
Longitude, latitude are your friends, though.
Couple of helpful staring at your screen tips right there, right off the cuff. Go check it out. We'll have links to that stuff in the show notes. All right, Matt, let's do the news.
Hey, it's the news, and this episode is brought to you by
Ting.com, Matt. Ting is mobile that makes sense. Ting is my mobile service provider and Matt's mobile service provider. See what I got right here? Nexus 5. Hey, Matt, what do I got on that Nexus 5?
I'm going to Sailfish OS.
Hey, you got it.
I got it. My psychic
Yep.
abilities have finally come to fruition.
I bet they all thought you were going to say Lollipop, because that's all I've been talking about lately. But no, I've also got Sailfish OS on there. In fact, I was just trying to get a game of cards to work, but it's not starting.
No love, huh?
I got this hooked up to the Ting network. Why? Because Ting is mobile that really, actually, truly, genuinely makes sense. No contract, right?
None.
No early termination fee, okay? And you only pay for what you use. It's a $6, just flat rate for the line, and then it's your minutes, your messages, and your megabytes. Ting adds them up, whatever bucket you fall into. That's all you got to pay. Average Ting line for the Jupiter Broadcasting audience, $26 a month. That's a full-fledged smartphone. I've got 3 lines. I think actually this month, because of the holidays, it's cyclical, Matt. I go up and down.
Yeah, see, I'm only 16, because I do everything over VoIP if possible.
I'm with 3 lines, I'm getting close to $40 right now.
That's not bad.
That's
not bad.
For 3 smartphones.
Well, I was 20-something last month. I'm 16 this month. I keep it pretty low.
I feel comfortable handing out Ting to people that I think maybe are going to have a hard time, maybe would need a little hand holding, because Ting has no hold customer service. You can call them up 1-855 Ting FTW, and a real person answers the phone. But on top of that, usually the people in my circle are fairly technical, fairly sophisticated users, so they just have everything they need right there in the Ting dashboard. It's got everything. And Ting's about to get a lot better. So right now you can switch to Ting, and they'll pay up to $150 per line you have to get canceled. They have an ETF relief program. So if you're in a contract, if you got kind of, I'm not going to pass any judgment, but if you got swindled into a contract, I'm sorry about that. Ting's going to help you with the early termination relief, $150. That's credit's going to go towards your line. That's going to be you're going to get months of free service. You really are.
It's just money well spent.
Yeah, I think it's probably right now, Matt. Now is the best time in the history of humanity to switch over to Ting. They got this ETF relief program making the cost easy, but also Ting has just announced that starting in February, they're going to roll out GSM support. And they've got a great, awesome video that's very, movie trailer about it. That gives, the whole spec rundown of the SIM card. And they have, listen to this epic music. Listen to that. Go, Ting! So, yeah, it's a really big deal, though. Starting in February, Ting will be GSM and CDMA coverage. So those of us that have, the Nexus 5 will be able to have a GSM SIM in there or CDMA. There's going to be dual SIM phones. It also means that devices like the iPhone 6 will be able to come over, GSM-compatible phones. And it's going to be the same pay-for-what-you-use model. You'll be able to go in the Ting dashboard and say which phone if you want the GSM line or the CDMA line to be the primary number. You'll be able to do all the management through the Ting dashboard. It's going to be the ultimate service. It means when you travel now, wherever you're going to go, you're going to have good Ting coverage. I love the idea that I'll be able to combine GSM and CDMA in my device. That's really exciting. You get that early ETF relief program. You combine that with the Switch coming in February.
And I'm telling you, if you have phones on, I had 2 Verizon phones that I don't use anymore that I did some checking on. Both of them are compatible.
Woo, boop, boop, boop. Go
That's
check it
big
out.
time. So if you got family and friends, there you go. There's your in.
Last.ting.com. You can. They have their BYOD checker right now.
That's what I did. I ran it through and actually run the numbers through it to make sure that particular unit runs, and I was blown away.
You plug in where it's from and the EMI or IMEI, and they'll do a compatibility
Just click the
check.
if you don't know what that means. It'll tell you.
And you can also check their coverage map to see what the coverage will be like in your area. And it's kind of amazing.
It's really cool.
Yeah. So
I mean, and being able to get the phones in like that's going to be a big deal for a lot of people.
So do this. Do us a favor. Start by going to last.ting.com. Last.ting.com will give you a $25 discount on your first device, or if you have a Ting-compatible device already, $25 in service credit. Remember what I said, the average Jupiter Broadcasting bill is $26. So you take that $25 credit, and if you have an ETF relief, that's $150 of credit. You're not going to be paying for your Ting service for a few months with that.
There it is.
Last.ting.com. Last.ting.com. And a big thanks to Ting for sponsoring the Linux Action Show.
Woo!
I'm really looking forward to the GSM. It's like a 1-2 punch, Matt. It's
Telling
really
you.
exciting. All right, so the big story this week in the news is probably coming out of Canonical. It's the holiday week, and there's not a lot developing right now.
Right.
But they announced Ubuntu Snappy Core. Snappy Core. Now, there's something out there called Ubuntu Core. Now we have Snappy Core. So we brought on Dustin Kirkland. He's the Ubuntu Cloud Product Manager and Strategist at Canonical. So he's sort of the guy that would know about this. If there were a horse, this episode, we should just call it the horse's mouth.
There it is.
Because it's all about getting the information right out of the horse's mouth this week. So I brought Dustin on. He pre-recorded because he wasn't able to join us live on Sunday. And the first question I asked him is, what the heck is Ubuntu Core?
It's a very lean, mean, small Ubuntu. The key difference is that it behaves in a transactional manner. So updates, applications are all handled much more like your phone. So the base operating system itself is a read-only disk image. We provide updates to that image as other images. So you can download that image, perhaps in the background, and when you apply it, it gets written to a secondary partition, and then on reboot, you flip those partitions and you boot back into the new update. And it's a transactional manner. All applications are backed up, all the data is backed up, and you can roll back to the previous version.
And are the applications specifically isolated from that read-only base OS?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so there is read-write space available. Each application has its own read-write space. Applications are isolated both from the underlying operating system, but also from one another. Applications are installed and updates are managed through a new packaging tool that we've developed from scratch called Snappy. Actually, it's built off of the packaging tool we use on the Ubuntu mobile side of things called Click. So we have Click packages for the Ubuntu mobile, Ubuntu Touch for phones and tablets, and we have Snap packages available for Snappy.
So they are similar to Click packages, but they're different.
Very similar to Click packages, a little bit more tailored and focused to cloud and environments.
Okay.
Certainly the applications are much more focused to cloud environments, right?
Yeah.
A cloud server, Snappy server might have an SSH server,
right.
and a console, but it certainly doesn't have touch input and a GPS and all the different
Firefox or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Services in Snappy, and I guess the interest in Snappy for cloud services is really around microservice architectures, if you're familiar with a microservice architecture, which is basically a collection of lots of little servers, each of which provide individual bits and pieces of a grand service. And Docker fits really well into that kind of an environment, where Docker images, Docker apps themselves are small contained bits of functionality that provide one service and only that service. And if you want to provide a different service, well, that's a whole different Docker Docker image.
Yeah. So going forward, so is essentially Ubuntu Core being retired and being replaced with Snappy?
Oh, not at all.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Snappy is offered in addition to everything we currently do at Ubuntu.
Is there going to be a different update strategy for Ubuntu Snappy, since the idea would be all the applications are containerized or isolated? Is there going to be more of a rolling base, or is it more of an LTS snapshot style?
We're going to offer both, actually. So the rolling approach is very interesting, and actually that's where we've done quite a bit of research and development, is around that rolling. We're calling it Edge right now, but all of my Snappy instances are currently pointed at Edge. When there's an update available, I click update, and if it's already downloaded in the background, all it takes is usually just a reboot, and I'm instantly in that new Edge image. Of course, we have customers who depend on the stability and the functionality around LTSs. So we do intend to have a 1604 LTS Snappy. That'll probably be the first LTS Snappy. Until 1604, I think the plan is to have to follow rolling. We probably will cut a 1504 release and a 1510 release. But the intention is that any early adopters adopting 1504, 1510 should really upgrade to the LTS once that becomes available.
That makes sense. So when I'm looking at the market for these types of operating systems now, obviously cloud deployments seem like an obvious go-to. I could even see maybe in the future in the mobile, but when I look at my options right now, are there going to be certain platform features that Ubuntu Snappy will provide that maybe would give me incentive to use over something sort of like CoreOS or rolling my own container system with just a base Ubuntu install? Is there something on top of Snappy, like platform features, that I'll want to take advantage of?
I certainly hope so. That's why we're entering this market. We think we've got a compelling story around Ubuntu. I think the reputation I hope we've established over the last 10 years with Ubuntu is a couple of things. One, a very predictable, bulletproof release cycle, right? You've been able to get a new Ubuntu every 6 months for the last 10 years now, right? You can set your watch by that release cycle. Every one of those releases, we hope, includes the latest and greatest open source software, right? We pull in, we have a tremendous heritage with Debian. We work with a number of upstream open source projects. We really try to bring the latest and greatest, and latest really being essential to Ubuntu, the latest and greatest of open source, the open source world, to a quality assured, tested, integrated experience. And that experience is the other part of Ubuntu. We really want to bring the Ubuntu experience to the transactional atomic world, the world of atomic updates and transactional updates. That experience is something that, from the mobile to the desktop, but particularly in the cloud where Ubuntu is heavily adopted, we're doing this in response to customer requests for, we're interested in this approach, but we want to do it the Ubuntu way.
You know what I was thinking is, when I hear that, I think, for the desktop.
Right.
Bring it to the desktop, guys.
If you kind of will it enough, it'll happen. If you build it, they will come.
Yeah. So we'll actually have extended clips from our chat with Dustin in Tuesday's Linux Unplugged, where I actually do ask him about the desktop. And we go in a little bit into how Juju fits into all of this. And what the heck is the difference between an apt package, a click package, a snappy package, and Juju. So that'll be in Tuesday's Linux Unplugged. Thank you to Dustin Kirkland for coming on the show from Canonical and telling us a little bit about Snappy.
That was awesome. Good stuff.
So this next story, you could tell it's the holiday season when a story like this is getting a lot of attention. And I ran
or when your Firefox is purple.
Yeah, I suppose so. So Yahoo has started to prompt Chrome users when they're using Yahoo Search to upgrade to Firefox. So if you visit any Yahoo property today, chances are you'll see an upgrade to the new Firefox link in the top right corner of your browser. The prompt also appears if you're using Internet Explorer, Opera, and even the new Yandex browser. However, the prompt is missing from Safari, which will probably prompt a new round of speculation, TechCrunch thinks.
It does feel a little bit like drive-by software when you do that. I'm not saying it is, but I'm saying it has that whiff of it, because I've seen that done maliciously with malicious shareware. So
yeah, there is that. Like I don't like getting users comfortable with the idea of clicking that. So I asked my wife, longtime Firefox user. I said, do you mind when you go to Yahoo if you get this prompt? She says, first of all, people use Yahoo Search.
Exactly. Yeah, my wife says the same thing about Bing. But
it's the same thing.
It is the same thing.
So that was, and then she's like, you know what? This is like, I got over this in the 90s when you'd see this with Netscape and IE. Like
best viewed in. She's
over it, and she just totally doesn't even see it. So I took that as
that's good.
That's your average user who's aware of these things but still isn't very bothered by it. I think it's fair. I've been to Google's properties before and seen them prompting me to upgrade to Chrome.
They do push it. They do push it. But I think it's also presentation. I would have to see how they're doing it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just because Google does something doesn't mean you want to repeat that.
Chat room seems to be all on board on it. EB in the chat room says it's brilliant.
Okay, and if it gets the adoption up, it's not malicious, so that's cool.
You think it will?
I don't
You
know.
think it's gonna...
Well, yeah, actually. It depends on who's going there.
See, I think part of it is what bothers me, because I'll be honest, it does bother me a little bit, is it feels like Mozilla's selling out a little bit. Because let's all be honest here.
Yeah.
Yahoo search isn't that great. And if you're going to switch away from Google, us end users, if you really, truly, honestly, we're 100% in for just the users, wouldn't you gone with DuckDuckGo?
Generally speaking, there's actually a study that compares Yahoo users to Google users. But basically, you got Yahoo and Bing, you got Google, and then you got DuckDuckGo, which is way up here in the stratosphere because that's where all the really smart people are. So, I'm just saying. Something to think about.
Yeah, I agree. There is a different user base to it, too. And I think
there is.
It feels like it was a business deal that was necessary, right? Yeah. Mozilla needs the money. So they had to go with somebody that could pay. DuckDuckGo probably just doesn't have the pockets to pay.
Absolutely.
So that was almost understandable. But then it's like, now you've gone a step further.
Yeah.
You've gone like, it's gotten a little dirty. It feels a little, I don't know. Something about it doesn't feel right now. Maybe Firefox doesn't have anything to do with this.
Well, and a lot of times they don't. A lot of times software companies specifically will enter agreements that they don't really vet clearly enough, and next thing you know, their software is being railed alongside or used or installed in techniques. Absolutely, you could be absolutely right. That could be what's I've seen that happen. I've actually been called in after things like that have happened. So
clean up.
Yeah, clean up. So, it's one of those things. Now, at the same time, I'm thrilled that Firefox is getting the adoption, but it does set a bad precedent. Just does.
Yeah. I've actually been, it's funny, after all of the hoopla around Firefox, I've actually been using it over the weekend because it's what it came with on Fedora, and I already had my Mozilla Sync profile ready, so I just plugged in my info and I was off to the races.
I literally use them for different sets of bookmarks because I'm weird.
That works too. Yeah. So it was a story that I know is getting a strange amount of attention, and between that and the Ubuntu Snappy Core, those seem like the big stories this week. So that, Matt, is all the news for this week. We've brought on a Fedora developer panel. Not one developer. Come on. No. We brought on a whole panel of Fedora developers to go down and really deep dive into Fedora 21, looking towards Fedora 22, and really wrapping our heads around what the different flavors of Fedora are and what they do. So right before we get to that, I got to thank our segment sponsor, and that's System76. Head over to System76.com right now and take advantage of their $5 shipping. $5 all season long shipping.
$5. $5.
I'll take that.
What can I get for $5? I can get a computer delivered to my doorstep for $5.
$5 shipping, man. And one of the other things that System 76 recently rolled out is lifetime support. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's mad respect for that.
And you know what? I put Fedora 21 on my Bonobo Extreme. It rocks. It seriously, seriously rocks. So head over to System76.com. Also check out some of the great desktops. They got sales on my baby, the Leopard Extreme. I'm looking at you. Leopard Extreme.
Water-cooled goodness.
Built right here in the U.S. System76.com. Systems that are designed to work with Linux. That way you don't have to fight with the hardware and the drivers. You just get to play with your Linux. Regardless of the version of Linux, it all works great. System76.com. Get yourself something nice. And tell them the Linux Action Show sent you. All right, Matt. Well, we have assembled a Fedora developer panel, and joining us once again on the show is Matthew Miller, the Fedora project lead. Matthew, welcome back to the Linux Action Show, and happy Sunday to you.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
So,
it's been an exciting morning. Got fire alarms going off at the house.
Oh,
and
no.
everything.
Oh, really?
I'll heat up for the show. It'll be great.
Will you do me a favor, so that way I get all the pronunciations right and everything like that? Will you introduce who we have on the panel with us for the folks at home?
Yes, we have Kushal from the Fedora Cloud Working Group, and Owen from Fedora Workstation, and Paul as well, and then Stephen.
And Stephen's going to be talking about server stuff. So we've got the full spread here today, and probably, I think, Matthew, maybe where to start is we're going to be throwing around some jargon, and one of them is, I've even gotten this wrong, I've called these different editions of Fedora spins, but that's actually something that spins is something that already exists. So these are flavors. What's the difference between a spin and a flavor of Fedora?
Yeah, so we have spins have existed in Fedora for a long time as a way that anybody can basically take the package set and make a sort of a curated collection of it and install media that has their own selection of things. So we have particularly like the desktop environments like the KDE SIG and the XFCE SIG, put a lot of work into those. Then we also have a lot of different spins that are a little more like one-person projects, and some things that are more obscure, like we have a Fedora robotics spin, which is in downloads not very popular, but importance very popular because the person who put that together wins the Robot World Cup of soccer like every year with Fedora.
That's awesome.
Oh,
that's
man,
kind of
that's cool.
So that's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah,
so
that's a nice one.
Wow.
Yeah, it is really cool. The spins let people sort of make their own, a remix. It's not a remix, but it's all Fedora bits. Remix is yet another thing where if you want to make a Fedora derivative with your own bits or changes, you can, and you have remix branding for that. So with this Fedora Next thing that we're working on, this is actually Steven's idea that he brought to Flock 2 years ago now. And the idea of having not just sort of a default offering and then you could get these alternative spins, but to actually go through a process kind of as if we were making a real product. They're not something we're selling, so we're actually not using the word product in our marketing and public talk. But sort of the idea was we're going to look at this, like we want to actually look at what's out there, what people need, and what we can target to make Fedora grow, and kind of went through a formal process of coming up with these things. And so these three segments of cloud, server, and workstation are what we came up with.
Well, that seems like a good spot to ask Stephen the first question. So, Stephen, it sounds like you were maybe an early proponent or the main proponent for Fedora.next. Did your background in the server space give you that motivation, that push? Was it, I want to be able to dedicate more to server? What really pushed that forward for you?
Yeah, that was a major piece of it. I was looking at, I was taking a look back at Fedora's history, and one of the things that's interesting about Fedora's history is that it really started from, an enthusiast, I want to break into the server world kind of group, and that was the Red Hat Linux community. That was where it all kind of began, and over time, the Fedora community kind of became a very desktop-centric community, and a lot of that early adopter voice started getting lost, and it started getting relegated to stop energy. It started getting relegated to, no, you can't do that. That's not secure. But it's so much easier to use. Well, that doesn't make sense on a server. And arguments of that sort really made me realize that it's really difficult to be a one-size-fits-all distribution.
Right, because you can't just have one focus, right?
Exactly. I mean, the old adage, try to please everyone all the time, you're not going to please anyone.
True.
And so, taking a look at our Fedora community, I was realizing there's really three distinct constituencies there, and they all have very different needs. So, when we were at Flock, at the very first Flock, I was running a session called the Fedora Crystal Ball. Where do we see the Fedora project in the next 10 years? Or maybe it was the next 5 years, but either way, most people's answers were, well, probably more infighting.
Wow, really?
Wow. Yeah.
It's honest, at least. It's good.
Yeah, and so that said to me, okay, I'd been batting around this idea in a couple of internal conversations. I'd been talking to Matthew about it, a bit to Paul and some of the other folks around. And I just said, all right, you know what, I'm just going to pitch this and see where it goes. And perhaps surprisingly, a lot of the Fedora community just latched onto it and said, yeah, that makes sense. We should be dividing up our focus and making sure we get this right for these three biggest groups in the Fedora community.
So that seems like it was a fairly organic process. You start thinking about this, you're reflecting on it quite a bit, and then is it through these Flock conferences and mailing lists that the idea begins to spread, or how do you primarily promote it in the beginning? Honestly, to me, it seems like a pretty big feat to change the direction of a project the size of Fedora.
Yes, absolutely. And a big piece of it was the fact that we took this to Flock, and a very sizable portion of our active contributor community does go to Flock. Not all of them, certainly, but a large enough percentage that a good idea or a bad idea has a good chance of being taken to the next step or shot down immediately at a Flock conference. And so I think it was the right place to start. And then immediately after Flock, Matthew and I went and we started taking it to the Fedora board and the Fedora engineering steering committee and taking it to the Fedora development lists and getting feedback. And what we were interested to discover was we weren't getting feedback that saying, this is a terrible idea, you're ruining Fedora, stop. What we were getting was, maybe we could do it better if we do it slightly different and do it this way. And it was very, very nice to see that we were actually getting a whole lot of positive feedback, which the undertone was, hey, this is probably a good idea.
Mm-hmm. So now, do you feel like this flavors arrangement gives you more flexibility and freedom to make server a more competitive product and to make I think I'm curious to know what you think it would take to make Fedora top of mind when I think to go deploy a new VPS or a new physical server. What does it take, and is this part of getting there?
Right. So it's an interesting space because, of course, Fedora Server, I get asked quite often, where does Fedora Server live in a world that has Red Hat Enterprise Linux and CentOS as well? And it's an interesting space because naturally we want there to be we know that there's a community out there that needs a newer, more advanced server, needs newer features from the kernel, needs needs the latest Node.js, needs all sorts of these new features that, yes, if you go to RHEL or CentOS, you're going to get a 10-year lifespan on technology, but after the first year, a lot of the application space has moved past it, and now it's trying to shim things into the stable life. And certainly there are plenty of applications out there that are going to need the 10-year lifespan.
Right.
But in a more DevOps style world, where the operating system is a little more of a commodity, that you expect that when you need to change something, you're just going to slap out a new operating system, and if you need updates, you're going to spin up a new VM, put it on that one, and switch the DNS pointer.
Yeah.
It becomes somewhat less interesting to have a system that's been stable for the last 9 years, as it does having a system that contains the newest stable pieces.
It honestly, in some ways, almost feels like an old way of doing things. And so honestly here, when we deploy services for our backend infrastructure, a lot of the times we need more up-to-date packages, and we just look at it and think of all of the things we'd have to do to bring one of the enterprise-grade distros current with all the things we need. And for us, Fedora is a very likely alternative because, like you say, it's fairly fresh and fairly stable. And the only problem I have with it is I can only use it for a short amount of time compared to CentOS. So how does this new flavor of Fedora Server sort of address that issue, where maybe I could install Fedora, keep something fresh, but keep it on there for maybe 3 years or so? Is that possible?
Right. So we get that question a lot as well, as to whether or not we're going to change the life cycle with Server. And there's some discussion that that might happen. It's not going to happen this year, and it's not likely to happen in 2015. But that may, we may be looking at more of like a 2-year lifespan at some point. But we need to get a server into a much more stable and workable situation. The other thing that we're trying to focus on is the real reason behind why people ask for that. And it's not when someone says, I want it to be stable for 3 years, that doesn't necessarily mean they want the exact same package set for 3 years. They just want to make sure that
it's
the applications they're running continue to run for 3 years.
Yes.
Which is a different problem to solve. One way to solve it, and the classic enterprise way, is to freeze the package set at that time.
Mm-hmm.
The other way to solve it is to find ways to make sure that you can blast out Fedora 22 or Fedora 23 and make sure that anything that ran on 21 continues to run.
Yes. Right, of course.
So I think that's an area that we're going to be exploring more heavily in the server, is the ability to do these 6-month, 12-month updates.
Yeah.
But not break your existing system.
I like that a lot. So while we're on the topic of looking forward at server, and then it's kind of my last real big server question is I know there's sort of 3 big new features to server. One of them is a term I've heard kicked around a lot. I'm not really familiar with it. So could you break down what those sort of 3 new features are and what you're excited about them?
Okay, sure. So the 3 primary new features that end users are hopefully going to be excited about are the Cockpit project, the Rollkit project, and the OpenLMI project.
Okay.
And I'm listing these in reverse order of complexity.
Okay, nice.
The Cockpit project is a brand new graphical HTTP-based management console for server systems. It's kind of our bootstrapping tool. We want to build the Fedora server around the idea that the ideal case is that you should not have to have a monitor attached to your servers. And being able to do some of the more common tasks and be able to monitor the system and be able to set up users and join it to a domain and all of those things that you can either do by Kickstart or SSH. We wanted to have a set of tools that a relatively junior or mid-level admin, maybe somebody coming from Windows, would be able to pick up, have it be very discoverable, and be able to just use it easily. And so that's the Cockpit project.
Very cool.
And that's getting a lot of good press in the Fedora 21 release. There's a lot happening upstream. It's going to look completely different in Fedora 22.
Oh, really?
Well, when I say completely different, I mean it's going to have a world of new features, and they've done a few tweaks to the user interface, which was already quite impressive, just to make features more discoverable.
So that's Cockpit, and that's cockpit-project.org, right?
Yes, cockpit-project.org.
All right.
Sounds awesome.
So the second major feature in Fedora Server is going to be RollKit, and that's
RollKit, ROLL kit.
ROLE kit.
Ah, okay.
And that's on fedorahosted.org/RollKit.
Okay.
Although don't go there because the wiki is very poor.
All right.
It's very much an engineering project at the moment, and the wiki is not terribly well curated.
Okay. All right. We'll forgive.
The goal of RollKit was, the idea is that there's a certain number of things that basically every deployment environment is going to need. Every deployment environment is going to need some way to manage users. It's going to need some way to have a database server. It's going to need some way to be a file server. And these are things that we can talk about, instead of as packages, we can start talking about them as the roles of the server. So the idea behind RollKit is being able to have a push-button mechanism for deploying a best practices version of a domain controller, a best practices version of a file server, and a database server.
So instead of me saying install DNF, install Samba, open LDAP, bind, all of these things, and anything else I might need, I say one role,
and then configuring them individually.
Right. So this also blasts out the configuration for them as well.
Yes, we're working on having it'll blast out a best practices configuration, and then you'll be able to tweak it after it's installed.
So how does that work on like the first time I set up? Do I do like a standard install one time and capture that session and then make it a role, or is it a script that I give answers to? What does that look like from my end?
All right. So from your end, the way a role is designed, roles are being packaged and released. Right now we have one role that we shipped with Fedora 21, which was a domain controller based on top of FreeIPA, which is another great project that we're heavily promoting in 21. Although it's been there for a while, it saw a major rewrite of the UI and things like that. So the idea is, we blasted out with we have a command line utility. That's fronting a dbus API that in Fedora 22 Cockpit will be providing an interface to. We can provide it with a set of options. For most things, there's a set of defaults that we've discussed in the Fedora server SIG and decided, this is the best practices way to deploy this. So,
SIG is, remind us, because I think that's an internal term, right?
Well, it's. I thought it was.
Oh, I don't know.
Common, but it's a special interest group.
Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. So I wasn't sure what it was.
Yeah, the server SIG is is what we refer to the server community in Fedora.
Okay.
They have a special interest in seeing servers.
That makes sense.
Right. So in the case of the domain controller, we've narrowed down the set of options that have to be set to the admin password.
Wow. Wow.
Everything other than that has a reasonable and well thought out default.
So it is now easier to deploy a Windows domain controller on a Fedora box than it is on an actual Windows server.
Well, this is a Linux domain controller.
Yeah, I know. But still though. I mean, that's quite the process, and
that's actually better.
It is. I think that's what I mean. It's like it's more remarkable. It's simpler than it would be if it was on an actual Windows server.
Right.
That's really cool.
And down the road, I'm hopeful that we'll also be able to do this with a Samba direct domain controller as well. So yes, the goal is that you should be able eventually to deploy a Windows domain controller easier on Linux.
Then just solve it all, yeah. Then you have all your logins covered. That'd be great. And how will I run my own RollKit server on my enterprise? Is this a centralized server? What's this like?
It's not a centralized server. What it is it's an auto-starting daemon. It doesn't run by default unless you actually trigger the dbus API.
Okay.
It runs on the end system, and some management console somewhere will tell the system, okay, you are now the domain controller role, or you are now the database server role. And RollKit is the engine that actually just goes, it pulls all the necessary packages, it deploys the configuration, it starts it, it stops it, it monitors it. It handles the firewall rules. It handles, and we didn't land this for Fedora 21, but in Fedora 22, it will also list the set of packages that this role the set of files on the system that this role says should be added to your backup set.
Oh, wow, nice.
That is really
so you make sure your important data. All right, so then the other one, the one that I've heard a lot tossed around that I'm not very familiar with, although I have a suspicion, OpenLMI. What's this about?
Okay, so OpenLMI is the Open Linux Manageability Infrastructure. It's built on top of the Distributed Management Task Force's Common Information Model, shortened to DMTF-SIM, which I'm suspecting that any of your viewers that are familiar with this terminology have all just winced, because it is extremely complicated.
Yeah.
OpenLMI is two things. It's first, the very first real-world reference implementation of DMTF-SIM. It is also a vast simplification at the end user perspective of DMTF-SIM. So what it is it's a complicated, powerful API for remotely managing aspects of the Linux system, the operating system, things from setting up and managing networking and storage interfaces.
Right. It's great for co-located servers, but I guess my disconnect here is OpenLMI sounds great, but wouldn't it be at the OS level? How do I do some of the hardware level things? Like a lot of times, the LMI management stuff is a hardware component in the server that I connect to, and that gives me the ability to, physically restart the machine, edit the BIOS, things like that. How does OpenLMI deal with that?
Okay. Well, today it's very limited because we're working with some of the hardware manufacturers. A lot of the stuff that they have, while it actually does use SIM, and so we can chain to it, a lot of it is fairly proprietary, and they don't always like to share that information. They prefer to use their proprietary tools. So we're working to figure out which ones of those we can chain to, and which ones of those we're going to just have to wrap an exec call around their tool.
Okay.
But for a lot of the hardware level stuff, we are working with them. I'm not allowed to say at this point which groups, which hardware manufacturers we're working with, but it's several of the larger ones.
We'll keep our ears out then. All right. Well, Stephen, is there anything else you want to touch on the server in Fedora 21, or anything you want to tease about Fedora 22 before we shift gears to cloud?
I did have one more thing to finish up on with OpenLMI. That's the thing that's nice about it is that the language, SIM is popular in the Windows space, so there are a lot of tools that are capable of talking to it.
Oh, yeah.
And we've also built a very powerful scripting interface around it based on Python. There was an existing Python binding to WebM, which is the web-based enterprise management, to do remote management through SIM. And then we built a very comprehensive series of simplification APIs in Python that can be scripted. We're trying to position this so that it's eventually going to be very competitive with PowerShell without requiring admins to learn an entirely new language.
Fascinating.
I like that.
Yeah, I really like that. Well, that sounds like the Fedora flavor is going to have a lot of interesting things over the near future, and all of this stuff you just talked about is probably going to have a front row seat on Fedora server, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
That's really cool. And openlmi.org, if some of the sysadmins out in the audience want to find out more about that, I'll put a link to that in the show notes. Stephen, stick around and feel free to jump in at any point. Why don't we shift gears to Kushal and ask about the flavor of Fedora called the cloud flavor. So Kushal, am I correct in saying that the cloud is its own dedicated flavor, and that's sort of your area of expertise?
Yes.
All right. So explain to me, sir, if you would, what is the difference between a cloud flavor and a server flavor?
Okay, so Cloud Flavor is basically a very minimalistic image, which can be, which is particularly produced to run on private or public cloud environments. So it contains the minimal set of packages, and it has actually two different kind of images also. One particularly made to run on containers, Docker that is. And we also have an atomic image, which can be used to have a great container host.
Okay, so it could also work as sort of a. Sounds like it could also work pretty well for a company like DigitalOcean, for example, that has a bunch of VPSs they deploy out. Fedora Cloud might be the right spin, or I'm sorry, flavor. I'm gonna get that right eventually.
Yeah, it's flavor. I think of it as an ice cream store.
So, what is it about Fedora Cloud that has you excited in version 21 of Fedora?
One of the biggest things which I liked is the size. We managed to reduce the size quite a bit. One of the major feature we had in this Fedora 21 is actually to split the kernel package into two different packages, and I think one meta package, so that we have only the minimal set of core kernel drivers into the core modules, and then one kernel module package which contains the rest of the drivers. So that also helped to reduce the size a lot. And we are keeping a note to make sure that the overall size of the cloud image is small.
So, Kushal, are you watching developments like CoreOS and Ubuntu Snappy Core? And do you see their approach where they're sort of taking the same thing, very minimal base operating system, optimized to have containers running on top of it? Do you see Fedora Clouds competing in that same space, or do you see it as a different product altogether?
I should not say that it's only competing, but we are in a mixed position for the same. We have the atomic image, which is particularly built to become a container host. So it contains Docker, it contains Kubernetes, the latest cloud in it, and you can actually upgrade the whole system or actually roll back based on the atomic upgrade commands.
Right.
So that is pretty good or a solid base to have your containers. You want to run your applications on containers on that kind of host. And at the same time, for Fedora 22, we are actually looking forward to package Rocket into Fedora.
That was my next question.
Very cool.
So you are looking at Rocket then, and that could be coming in 22?
Yes, we are hoping so. If I remember correctly, I was watching your last show there from the CoreOS team also. Someone mentioned that we have a bug opened into the Rocket's GitHub while we're working on the Fedora package.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's going to be extremely interesting to look forward to. So anything else in Fedora 22 for the cloud flavor that you're excited about?
Yes. So we also streamlined our Docker image. So right now, if you do a Docker pull Fedora, the latest image which will come down from Docker Hub is actually built on Fedora infrastructure in Koji. And so that's something new. And we also have a couple of small tools which will be helping people to convert between, say, you are running a cloud instance and you want to convert it into a server instance for some particular task. So you can either do that by following a couple of steps with yum commands, or you can just install a small tool called Cloud to Server and just run the tool. It will do the conversion for you, and it will become a server instance for you.
Wow. You guys are making this whole sysadmin thing way too easy. It used to be a hard job.
Wow.
That's really
crazy.
That's
so cool, though.
I got to play with the cloud flavor. Kushal, thank you for breaking that down. I want to shift gears to Workstation. Why don't we start with let's start with Paul on the Workstation team. And Paul, will you tell us in Fedora 21 what made it into Fedora 21 that you're excited about on the Workstation side of things?
Sure thing. So obviously, we have the newest GNOME release, which is the centerpiece of our workstation. That's what we build the environment around. It's a tremendously popular environment, obviously, especially in its latest iterations. There were people who I think maybe for the GNOME 3.0, 3.2, maybe sort of were put off a bit by a lot of the major changes. But lately in the 3.12, 3.14 releases, so many of those issues have been not only just fixed, but fixed and improved like gangbusters. So it's, in my opinion, it's the best environment out there. But I know there are differences of opinion. That's my. You
won't get any
favorite
arguments from me, sir. I totally agree now. GNOME, especially the latest versions of GNOME, I wouldn't just say it's the best Linux desktop. I would say it is the best desktop environment, period, right now.
Yeah, I sometimes have to cope with Mac OS X and a couple other contexts in my life, and when I'm on it, I mean it's not terrible, but there are times where I'm wishing for things that are just easy in GNOME. But
Yeah.
so some of the elements that are in Fedora 21 that really were great this time around, I would separate them into two piles. One pile being things that are kind of delivered, done as is, and then there are others I think that represent sort of the continuation of a longer story.
Sure.
And I might separate those into two piles. And the second one, I might maybe want Owen to talk a little bit more about the coming stuff. So in 21 though, we had some great improvements to the terminal application. I mean, obviously, Workstation is what the name suggests, right? It is something that we target at a developer audience. That doesn't mean that it's not great for the average user, right? I'm certainly not a software developer, but Workstation is incredibly comfortable for me to use because the thing to remember is that developers are just people like us, right? And 90% of the things that they want to do every day are the things that you and I would do every day too. So things like opening up a web browser or having easy access to a productivity suite, things like that. So one of the areas that we've improved is getting at that software. The GNOME software application now makes it really easy to find software through searches. It makes it possible to have ratings for software, so you can find out what's popular in a certain area. And all of these applications are available at the click of a button.
I was playing around over the last week. I was extremely impressed with how smooth the GNOME software experience is and how well integrated it is with Fedora 21. So first of all, like say I'm setting up the RPM Fusion repo. If I click a link in my Firefox browser for the RPM Fusion repo, it opens up in GNOME software. I can add the repository immediately with just a very clear button to press. And so adding repositories is incredibly straightforward and simple, but even installing complex applications like the Ardor audio editing workstation, I went into the GNOME software, I found it, I clicked it, I thought, okay, now this, out of all the things I've installed, this will be the one that fails because Ardor is very complicated. I clicked the button, and about 2 minutes later, Ardor was installed on my system and ready to go flawlessly. It feels like it was a long time coming, but now that it's here, it's almost perfect in its integration.
Right. The developers behind the scenes, like Richard Hughes, who works on GNOME software, they've been working for a number of years trying to kind of paper over the difficulty of opening a terminal and knowing which package to install. And oftentimes it's a cryptic name. Right, something that maybe you and I are used to because we've been working on Linux for a while, but to somebody who really just wants to work on their new web app, even a normal user who just wants to get at a specific type of software so they can create some content, they may not be familiar with those names. So making it possible for people to find things more easily is such an important part of the process.
But I feel like that's almost underselling it though, because what I was impressed with, and maybe I missed it, but a lot of times when distributions make a switch like this, there'll be 2 or 3 other updaters that you could launch that are front ends to the same package manager. But in Fedora Workstation, when I go to update software, I do that in the same place I go to install software in the GNOME software app. When you made that switch, you went all in, and it's done really well. And there's not 2 or 3 different updaters on the system sitting around. Yeah. I go to one place. It's very simple and it's very straightforward. So it's really the combination of not just papering over those rough spots, but really you went all in too at the right time, which I was really impressed by.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's another piece of software I think that tends to get glossed over, which is it now has the capacity for, I guess, what you would call add-ins. So when you have a certain type of software installed, like let's say let's say it's a multimedia application that has specific types of add-ins, right? Whether they're codecs
or another example would be like Epiphany web browser, maybe plugins for Epiphany potentially,
right? Or plugins for gedit or something like that.
Yeah,
those add-ins actually can now be exposed, and in a really what I think is a really elegant way. So you can find out that there are these additions that you can get now for your software, which really had no way of being visible before. And now it's not only visible, but it's easy for someone who is not familiar with the packaging ecosystem to get access to those quickly.
Yeah. All right. So, anything else in 21 that are you comfortable talking all about the integration, or at least the early testing of Wayland? I last night on this machine, it was an Intel graphics. I just decided to try the Wayland login at the login prompt, and I logged in, and I pretty much wouldn't even know I was on Wayland. It was so flawless, I couldn't even believe it. I had some trackpad issues, but I had an external mouse. Outside of that, I just had last night a full desktop experience using GNOME on top of Wayland. That's kind of impressive.
Yeah, Wayland has come a long way in a pretty short time. I mean, there's a lot to Wayland that I'll be honest, I am not an expert on, but some of the things that it does give us is the ability to kind of increase the security in the graphical environment and sort of separate applications out a little more easily. It's also going to make it possible in the future for tear-free video. Right,
Yeah.
this is something that we've had an issue with for quite some time in Linux environment just because of the way that Xorg works. So this Wayland is going to overcome some of those limitations. And there are some great side effects as well, some great benefits like we should have a much better story on multi-monitor setups and when you've got different resolutions across many displays, which a lot of people do have nowadays, especially developers who are probably working on different kinds of content on different displays, and they really want that activity to be seamless.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So Wayland is a great example of something that is a continuing story, and I'm sure Owen will have something to add about that later.
Before we jump to Owen, would you be a good person to ask about Dev Assist? Because I've heard this is something that, speaking of reaching out to those developers, is something that's kind of being worked on right now too. And I'm sure there's more coming down the road, but I think some of it landed in 21, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have Dev Assistant, and this is I'm glad you brought it up because Dev Assistant is actually something that is very specifically targeted at developers, and it's something that can work across a really wide variety of developers. It has the ability to sort of pre-configure your environment to make it easier to start working on let's say your next the next Facebook that's out there, or the next Tumblr, or whoever's creating a web app.
But if I'm tracking, this could also be like used to set up like an Android development environment, which is sort of notoriously kind of a pain in the butt to set up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Dev Assistant is designed to be very modular, and so over time it's going to grow. It's going to grow new environments and new configurations. We can expect that, just like everything in open source, the development environments that software developers want to choose is going to change over time, right? I mean, in recent history, we've seen, like, for example, Go has obviously taken off. We can expect that in a couple of years, there will probably be languages that we haven't thought of yet that are going to hit big. And when they do, Dev Assistant is modular enough that we can start offering those environments really easily.
Go ahead.
If I could add for just a moment as well.
Go ahead, Steve.
One of the things that's this is a good place to talk about how the flavors are working together. A couple of the pieces that we've got in Dev Assistant, for example, I talked about a little bit on OpenLMI, the scripting environments that we're building.
Yeah.
One of the Dev Assistants that we have available is a bootstrap for those LMI scripts. So.
Sort of pre-configured for OpenLMI right there. One of the. So is it a package that these Dev Assistant the output that I run, or what is it from my perspective? What do I do?
What they will do is they will output essentially on your file system. They'll put together a Git repository generated with a framework of whatever it is you're about to work on. Install any packages you need in order to get that into shape, and optionally tie it to a GitHub account. So to push to.
Very neat.
It'll set up your Eclipse or your Vim for the environment, for the language.
Devassistant.org, and I'll have a link in the show notes too. And that's pretty cool. Okay, let's shift gears and talk to Owen about what's coming up in Fedora 22. So I know there's quite a few things, like we just mentioned Wayland, Owen, but what are you looking forward to in we're specifically talking about the 22 workstation flavor too, right?
Yes, so I'm most qualified to talk about what's coming in Fedora 22 Workstation.
Great.
We already talked about something that's new in server and cloud. So I mean, Wayland is certainly one of the big focuses there. As you tried it out yourself, you saw that you can definitely log into Wayland with F21. And and there are a few glitches, and those are one thing that we're going to be definitely working on fixing for Fedora 22. Input has turned out to be a really big area of work. I think, we talk about X or Wayland as a display server, but once you actually try to switch over from X to Wayland, you realize that the display server is just as much the input server, and there's just a ton of complexity on the input side.
Sure.
Handling trackpads, handling graphics tablets like a Wacom tablet. All of that has to be replicated again. And one of the things we're working on doing with this is actually taking a lot of the logic to handle all these different devices and putting in a library called libinput, which is shared between X and Wayland. So that's going to reduce the cases where we're going to have regressions going to Wayland. So we hope to have the input story a lot better for Fedora 22, where we really have it very solid and equal to what you would see under X. But we're also trying to get to the point where there's actually some features that you don't have under X, where we actually can do better. And one of the first ones is something that Paul mentioned, which is handling displays at different resolutions.
Sure.
I think so. Fedora really led the way in some ways in having support for like a laptop with a high DPI screen. On Linux, really, first you got like a 2560 or a 3000 pixel wide laptop, and you come up and all the fonts were just really, really tiny. And handling that kind of display well took some changes to the desktop, and we landed that in GNOME a couple of releases ago. But you still have a problem now. If you have a laptop with a high DPI display, and you stick a normal monitor next to it. You drag app over from the laptop to the normal monitor, and it's completely huge. And because there's just a very big difference in resolution.
Yeah.
So to handle this well, you have to be able to scale an application.
Right.
You have to say, I'm going to take this application which is rendered very large and shrink it down to display correctly on the monitor.
Right.
And that's something that you can't really do under X.
Oh.
So with Wayland, we can then actually have a much more flexible display system, and we actually can take apps and transform them. So now it appears on the right side, both on your laptop display, which is high resolution, and on the external display.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be a cool thing we're going to have with Wayland in Fedora 22.
So that should make it to 22.
I can't say that it definitely will because the code isn't written right.
It's on the list.
Yeah. Air quotes.
Cool.
But I do, but it's something we're going to prioritize working on, and it's something that we know what code we have to write. So I'm hopeful that we'll have that for Fedora 22.
Yeah, so that's Wayland. What else is coming up in 22 that you're looking forward to? This is my favorite topic because I'm a workstation guy, and I've been really impressed with the 21 workstation. So I'm really curious to see if 22 is what it's going to change.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a pretty long list we have of things that we want to get to in the workstation, and in some sense, Fedora 22 is a short release cycle. Fedora 21 came out just quite recently, and the beta freeze for Fedora 22 is in the end of March. So it's going to be a challenge to see how many things we can knock off. For the workstation off our work list by that time. But there are a couple of things that we're definitely looking towards. One thing is the messaging system. This is something that I guess has been a little bit of friction point for people with GNOME 3 since we started. So you have these messages which pop up from the bottom of the screen, and then it's not always clear, what to do, how to get back to the message you saw. You have to sort of know that there's a secret message tray you can get by going down to the bottom of the screen and putting some pressure on the bottom of the screen. People don't always find that. And there's also people don't always really like having stuff at the bottom of the screen because it can go up on top of your terminal. So we're looking at we have some designs for reworking how messages work and hopefully fixing some of these problems. So that's something that we're going to try to do for Fedora 22 is just improve the handling of messages on the desktop. And then and there's also something we're just trying to improve performance and trying to make things slicker. And one thing that I'm personally working on right now is just to try to really get on top of the battery life situation. It's something that I think it's something you can get a Linux desktop or a Linux work laptop, and you say, well, this says in Windows they claim that it's going to last for 10 hours, and when I actually try to use it on Linux, it lasts for 4 hours. Now, there's probably two sides of that. One, which is that it may not actually last for 10 hours under Windows, but there may also be things that we're just not doing well under Linux. So, there's some pretty good tools I think people have probably found PowerTop, which allows you to play around with systems, the settings in your system. But we really want to have it so when you get install Fedora on a laptop, it has the best battery life out of the box, and you don't have to tweak anything.
That would be great. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, and part of this is also writing tools to actually measure this and say, if we repeatedly do the same set of actions, if I, how long will the battery life manage? How long will the battery live?
Yeah.
Then if I change the setting, does that improve the battery life by 10 minutes or by an hour? So really be able to quantify that and not just sort of guess, say, I changed these settings, it seemed better.
On the battery life front, over the weekend, which is still the weekend, I guess. Feels like it was a long time ago. I got my hands on a MacBook Pro, and I think it's like a 2013 model, and I put Fedora 21 on it, just a live boot. And it was, I don't do this a lot, but it was the first time I'd ever gotten Linux to just boot up on a MacBook Pro with the Retina display fully supported. The Thunderbolt Ethernet was working.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, boy, it's really, really, really close. Is there anything in particular that Fedora is thinking about or doing to make the experience better on MacBooks specifically? And the reason why I ask even is because, and I'm sure you see it too, when you go to conferences, it's a sea of MacBooks. It's just all MacBooks. And I think to myself, we've got to be able to make Linux work well on there so when they get bored with OS X, there's something ready for them to go with. Is this something you guys are tackling?
Well, I mean, it's something we definitely pay attention to. I mean, it's definitely something that people, when Fedora doesn't boot on a MacBook, definitely people look at that and try to figure out and fix that.
Okay.
I'm not sure if there are particular items where we've said, okay, we need to fix this this thing and that it'll work really well. I think we've had some sort of discussions about whether we can handle the shortcuts a bit better. Like somebody who's using a MacBook is very used to copying, and pasting with the command key, and that's become suddenly. If Command C no longer copies, that doesn't work very well, and maybe we can just make that work out of the box. But I think is a question of anything where we do to have a great experience with Fedora, we have to actually say we're going to test on this hardware, we're going to fix what's wrong with that, and we're not just looking at that with MacBooks, but we're also trying to see if we can identify some particular models that we can reliably test Fedora on and say, let's make sure that these it's working really well here, and maybe eventually we could have a relationship with the manufacturer, actually, or just say if you get this laptop, we know Fedora will work well there.
At the end of the day, though,
some of the advantage.
It's sort of it's up to Apple though to do something with the hardware, right, and document the drivers.
Yeah, so I mean, Apple, we're always just going to be going on at it, sort of chasing after them because they're not going to tell us what they're going to change. They're not going to give us early access or anything like that, and we really can actually have a better relationship with other manufacturers who are more be willing to work with us and who actually care about having something other than, Apple only cares about having, OS X running on their systems. Right. We care about, other manufacturers who actually care about Fedora.
Yep.
So
that makes sense.
I think that the gap in terms of just the quality of the hardware is closing somewhat, and you can get some pretty slick laptops from other manufacturers. Yep. So I think that's where, I can expect a really great experience with Fedora to
the solutions to the problem will probably meet at some point. So is there anything else, Owen, on Fedora 22 you want to touch on before we wrap up looking into the future?
Let's see. And I think that really covers some of the big things. And I think beyond that, there's like a lot of small stuff. We have some cool integration where Qt applications are going to theme a lot better within the GNOME desktop. So when you run a Qt application within GNOME, it's going to look very unified with the desktop. And then there are a lot of just other small things like that.
So, Owen, would you have any comments on possible future integration with Workstation? And I'm not even totally familiar with Fedora Copper, but my understanding is it's sort of a build service that would make it a lot easier for users of Fedora Workstation to get fresh software that maybe isn't in the repos. Is there any plans to bring Workstation and Copper closer together?
So, I guess it's a complicated situation because Copper can be used for almost anything.
Yeah.
One of the uses that we actually did in the last cycle, because Fedora 21 was a very long cycle compared to, we were talking about Fedora 22 being a short cycle. And we actually put GNOME 3.12 into a Copper, so you could get GNOME 3.12, which did not actually appear officially in any GNOME release. You could get it out of a Copper. But in terms of actually having like somebody else's software in a Copper and then bringing that into GNOME software, I think it's something we've discussed, something we've looked at, but I think it's not it's a little bit hard to get that kind of really slick experience in the user interface that you saw with software, because coppers are so many different things. It's just say you add this copper, then you suddenly have a different set of software. So, I don't know, maybe some more we can do there, but I don't think we have concrete plans at the moment.
Okay.
So actually, there are some plans that are partly in development called the Fedora Playground, which is basically a selection of coppers which have made a commitment to be a little more polished. And so I'm not quite sure what the timeline for that is, but I think that we'll see something like that, and that is more likely to be integrated with software than the general anything goes kind of Wild West of
So
copper.
it's called right now it's called the Playground, and it's sort of the best of copper that might be user exposed.
Yeah, that's the idea.
That's really cool.
Kind of like greatest hits.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, copper is really neat, and it's not something I fully have messed around with, but since I've been messing around with Fedora, I ended up there, and I like the idea. It reminds me in some ways of the OpenSUSE build service or the AUR, but with the Fedora spin on it, which makes sense. So, Matthew, we've covered a whole range of stuff here. Is there anything else you want to talk about for Fedora 21 or 22?
I think we've covered quite a bit. Fedora 22 coming up very shortly in our minds as the developers here. But Fedora 21's been a great release. We're getting a lot of good feedback. One thing I think we're getting a lot of question about is this idea of we've really tried to have the messaging go to developers, because that's where we're targeting a lot of the focus. We're getting some questions from people like, are you abandoning everybody else with the desktop? And the answer is no, we're not abandoning anybody. It's a great desktop for everybody, as we talked about. Paul talked about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's like I said, I'm not a developer, and it works great for me.
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah, same here.
There it is.
Yeah. All right, you guys. Well, thank you very much for coming on, and thank you for a great release of Fedora and keeping us all up to date on all of it. A lot of changes. That's why we spent the time to break it all down for everybody. And I think now that we've got our heads around this, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch where the Fedora project goes. So, best of luck to you with Fedora 22, and thanks for coming on the show, guys. That brings us to the end of this week's broadcast. But, Matt,
yes,
we have a few things to talk about before we get out of here.
All righty.
Next week, December 21st, we won't have a live show, but we will have a best-of edition of LAS, highlights that the audience has submitted, and hopefully it'll be a good candidate for you to submit to friends and family that you want to bring into the Linux world with a nice, warming embrace of the Linux Action Show. It'll be some best moments to do that. And there hopefully even will be a little bit of new content in there, too.
Nice.
Nothing like outrageous,
right?
But I'm going to record some rappers for our best ofs, and probably have a few drinks while I'm doing that. So something awful will happen. Some holiday eggnog,
laying up on the
influence. Yeah. Some rum eggnog, bad decisions were made, kind of thing. Will be in there too. So that'll be out next week.
Nice.
And it works out really well because I go on an annual shopping trip with my dad, and I go the 20th.
Right on.
And then I go out all night. I get hungover really bad. It's always
part of the experience. Yeah.
I was looking at the calendar before the show this morning, and I noticed that last year, this was the Sunday where I was post-shopping trip, so I was probably extremely hungover this episode last year. Anyways, you can always go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar. All of the updates are there. When we're doing anything for the holidays, changing things around, you can stay up to date, jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar. And so no live show, but we'll still have a release next week.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, in fact, the whole week of shows starting next week, not the 15th through the 19th, but the shows that run the 22nd through the 26th, the Christmas week, those will be best of episodes.
The week of Christmas.
The week of. Yeah, so that'll be, if I have my dates right, that'll be the next Linux Action Show that all kicks off.
So then we would fall on the 28th.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll have all our regular shows for this coming week, including a Linux Unplugged that'll go deeper into Ubuntu Snappy, and we're going to have a Fedora 21 community review. So we'll finalize all our Fedora stuff with a quick community take in Unplugged this week. So I saw something kind of neat on Google+.
Yeah?
It's called Paper GTK. And the idea, I guess, is to kind of give like a material paper look to your GTK.
That's actually kind of slick.
So there's the poster linked to an AUR package. So I thought, well,
it's an AUR package.
If there's an AUR package, I might as well give it an install.
That's why he literally pulls his pants up to his chest and goes to the AUR and install stuff.
All right, so here we go. So this is, if you're watching the video version, this is my GNOME desktop with the Paper theme installed. I don't know. Here, I'll open up a gedit for you.
That's actually not bad.
It's not bad, right? I usually go really dark.
Yeah.
This reminds me a little bit of Material Design. It's kind of nice, though.
It's got a decent
I think I would need to
contrast.
change like my background a little bit.
Well, yeah, no, the background needs to kind of flow with it.
For me, I found it still has this paper theme still has a few rough edges. Like the terminal, if you're using your theme colors, you won't be able to read the fonts. But also,
that could be a problem.
sometimes, although it's not doing it right now, sometimes when you hover over menu items, the menu item disappears.
Ooh, so it's a little bubbly. Yeah.
Yeah, see, like, so it's I think specifically it's the new GTK pop-ups that it happens on. The new stuff that came out in the recent versions of GNOME. Because see, it's not happening over here on this menu, but it happens over here on this menu. So there's a few rough edges, but it's clean looking. It's nice.
Very clean.
And it's actually easy to read too.
Yeah, that's not bad. I'm always weird when it comes to themes, but it might actually grow on me. But I'm pretty happy with Numix.
So it's called Paper GTK. Yeah, I am happy with Numix as well. But you can check it out. I'll have a link in the show notes. It's clean. It's nice.
Very clean.
Yeah, and you can find it at snwh.org/paper. They have a website up about it. So you can get it up in your distro.
Save trees, use paper.
Hey, we got an email about systemd. There's a lot of feedback that came in from our Lennar interview, but I didn't want to drag out the systemd stuff too much, so we're gonna just touch on one from Damon here. He says, "I've been using Debian for the past 8 years. After starting out with Ubuntu, I have several laptops and desktops that are Debians or Debian derivatives of it. One of the desktops is a home server functioning as a file server, a print server, a network scanner server, SSH server, and wireless access point. And here's why I like Damon's questions, because he's just like, I'm just an end user.
Right.
I've heard all this talk about systemd. How does it actually impact me?
Exactly. What's the part that I care about that isn't political? You know what I mean? It's like, exactly.
So he says, with all of the debate regarding systemd and other init systems, the one question I have not heard asked was, how does this affect me, a power user, but not an admin?
Bingo.
If cups locks up and I can remote into my server and restart it with /etc/init.d/cups restart, then why should I care what init system is used? Or does that change? Actually, that does change. So that is actually one thing you'll have to care about, Damon. Is there more than I'm not understanding because of my limited administration skills? Love the show. Happy holidays, Damon. Well, happy holidays to you, too. Yeah. So the /etc/init.d/cups restart gets simply replaced with systemctl cups, whatever the name of the service is, space restart. Yeah. It's really straightforward, really simple. In fact, it's just as easy.
I think it's less typing.
It really is.
And once especially if you got it in your bash history.
And for me,
I do that most of the time.
I have it in the bash history, and then I use fish shell, so like everything autocomplete. So like when I log into my home server, it's like I start typing sudo system or I just sys and it autocompletes Plex Media Server or Sick Rage or
I'm
DB
so
restart.
bad with bash history. It's just, oh my god.
So, but really, Damon, I think from the most part, I mean that's really been. Matt and I, we have like some droplets we manage and a few things like that, but really we're more of just power users that, from your perspective, we've gone through the same change.
Yeah.
I've played with it, from the server side, maybe more than your average power user, but really, from what I've noticed, just on my workstations and desktops, if you're using it like that, it's not going to be a big deal.
Yeah, for me, it's just service handling. It's like, okay, did it stop? Did it start? Can I get a status? I'm good.
Yeah.
And it works and it does all those things.
Honestly, I think for power users, it makes the system a little easier. It's for system administrators that would probably prefer the older style init system.
Yeah.
So for users like yourself, systemd is usually a net win overall.
Yeah, and that's what you're looking for. Works.
Hey, Matt, if I wanted to read some of your wise words, maybe I'd go over to Datamation, huh?
You want to read some of my words? Datamation.com, scroll down to open source, clicky on the link, and otherwise you can check the show notes and grab the linkage there.
Little debate about if the goal of convergence is truly one to aspire for, and perhaps why it's still elusive.
Yeah, it's kind of all over the map. I kind of dive into that, and I got another article that'll be coming out on, I guess it's next Monday.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Don't forget to check out Linux Unplugged, episode 70. Matthew Miller joined us to chat a little bit about the release on the release day. That was pretty cool. I had a specific amount of joy torturing him on release day because that's stressful, right?
He was a good sport.
Yeah, he was. He was really good. It's the Fedora 21 release. I think it's been their best work ever from the Fedora project.
Oh, easily.
So
I'm really blown away.
Kind of exciting time right now, and so many cool technologies that they're working on and integrating. So there's just been a lot to cover on it. And that'll bring us up to our before our holiday week, which is pretty cool.
Yes.
And a big thank you to our producers, Rotten Corpse and Q5Sys and Eric, who've all worked really hard to get us these guests. They've done an outstanding job. When you have these many guests, it's a lot of moving plates at once that everybody has to keep spinning. And they've done a good job of stepping up when one has to step out, or vice versa. And they've also done a really good job of just looking at the news, analyzing what's interesting in the news, and then reaching out and getting those people directly to come on the show and talk to us about it, which has been really great.
They're a great team.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for tuning this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. We'd love to hear from you. Go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact and choose Linux Action Show from the drop-down. Or even better, visit our subreddit, linuxactionshow.reddit.com. There's always links coming in there, even when the show's not on the air. It's a great place to give feedback or engage in the community as well, linuxactionshow.reddit.com. We're normally live on Sundays at 10 a.m. Pacific. We will not be live next week, but we will have a new show. So have a great holiday, and we'll see you right back here in 2 weeks. I like that shot. Is that your home office?
This is.
That's a nice home office. You're rocking some serious books back there.
I got a lot of books. I've got 2 big monitors. You're on the vertical.
Nice. Ooh, I've always wanted to do the vertical monitor. And you got some nice Windows coverage there too.
I do. I've got nice windows. I've got a view of the Texas Hill Country.
Oh, so you're in Texas, huh? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Texas.
That looks like a great spot. Well, I'm super jealous now. Here I am in my dumb studio. You're down in Texas with some... I thought one window, but that is a really nice setup. I got a turkey fryer, Matt.
Dude, I'm actually... Really, how many pounds is yours where I'm actually selling it?
I don't know. I
got a 17-pound that I've actually got popped up on the eBays.
A 17-pounder? That's probably the upper limit of the size of turkey.
Really? Oh, yeah, no, I'm competing with 22 pounds.
For me, I find the best cooking comes out of the 14-pounder.
Really?
It's just, you can cook them and they're so moist.
And it's all about, cleanup. Are the cleanup utilities, because honestly, I love it to cook it well, but I want cleanup to be, hassle.
Well, what I don't know what I'm going to do with is how I'm going to dispose of literally a bucket full of used oil.
Well, obviously we bathe in it. You save it, and you do bacon in it. I don't know. That's a good question.
22-pound turkey. So
maybe you can power a car with it or something.
Going to be doing that for Christmas.
Chase has like a diesel power car. Maybe try it.
That's true. Yeah. So Christmas Eve, if the show after Christmas, I come back with a burned off face.
It's just like eyes and muscle.
It'll be awesome. If we go back to audio all of a sudden.
Oh, and have you used one? I'm sure you have probably used. Used a cookie fryer before.
Cookie fryer?
Cookie
fryer?
Cookie turkey, whatever, the bird thing with the wings and the shit.
What are you talking about? No.
A turkey fryer.
Oh yeah, that's what. Yeah,
turkey. So anyway,
it's a whole bucket, man. It's like a. It's like a stand.
You're familiar with it, right? You've used one. Okay, so you know not to like.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No.
And watch out for those cookie fryers that I make up because. God, 2 things I need in my life is I need an entourage and I need a ready room. If I can get those 2 things to happen in my lifetime, I think I'm set.
Yeah.
Right.
We did talk about how Wolf Blitzer has an entourage, right?
Right. Yeah. We need a. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. But even a ready room. That would be literally to where you walk in and it's like it has a replicator and it's a proper ready room. Man.
Oh yeah. Well, Jesus.
A big screen that makes it look like you're traveling at work.
I believe that is our burden. We will never have that. We will. We are the generation, and maybe the next couple generations. That knows it's possible, but we'll never be able to have it.
Well, we're not that far off from protein resequencers. Really.
Sure.
At least that's what they tell us at least that's what they told us at school for school lunches. But that being said,
wouldn't that be great for school lunches?
Well, it tasted like it came out of a protein resequencer.
Yeah, it does.
Just piped right through, but I don't know. It was not terribly tasty. But I think a replicator would be more ideal because you're actually dealing with stuff that tastes like food. So,
you know what I think I'm going to boot up? Sailfish OS.
Oh, I see what you. Oh yeah. Look at me, I got my Sailfish OS.
No, look at me with Sailfish.
Herpa derpa.
I got Sailfish OS.
Oh, look at me.
Look at me with Sailfish OS.
Herpy.
It swipes.